Hello everyone, and here we have the database setup for our global database. So I have my primary in AP South 2, that is the Hyderabad region, and I have the replica in AP South 1, which is nothing but the Mumbai region. As you could see, there is a global database and it has two regions, and based on the primary and secondary, the failover will happen. Now, how we do failover here is we need to have two records, one for your primary and one for your secondary, and they will both should map to a single record name. And based on the routing policies that we apply, we can always switch back and forth. So in case of a disaster, you see that I have this mydb.database.myglobalApp.com. So in case of a disaster, if one of the value is not available, that is my primary is down in AP South 2, then the end users don't have to change the URL. Under the hood, Route 53 will route the traffic to this new region. But for now, I have kept the weight as 1 and 0. So currently this mydb.database.myglobalApp will resolve to this particular DB primary AP South 2 cluster, which you could see from here is my primary cluster. So let's see if everything is working as expected. So I've opened a Cloud Shell. So kindly note that I have used here internal private hosted zones. So I need to have a Bastion host inside the VPC. Only then my queries to resolve this particular domain name would resolve. But in an actual scenario, also you need to have this, because otherwise you will have to allow public traffic from instances outside your VPC or outside your system. But if there is a network issue and you're not able to route traffic, then you will have to check your security groups with respect to databases. Ensure that SSH access is enabled. Only then you would be able to SSH into the Bastion host and then probably reach your database service. So here I'm getting into the mydb.database.myglobal.com. So ideally it should resolve to my primary database. So it is working as expected. I have my DB primary AP South 2, and that is what it is getting resolved into. And this is nothing but my primary instance. All right. Now, what we can do is there are many ways to do it. So what we are going to try now is we will first try if our switch over or if these records are working as expected. So for that, what I will do is I will edit this record. I'll make its value as 0 to ensure that no traffic is going to my primary region and traffic is going only to my secondary region. So we will first make that check just to ensure that when the failover happens and when we are switching over, the domain names get mapped accurately to the records and they behave as expected. All right. So now I have my db database.myglobalApp.com resolved to my global database cluster, which is nothing but my secondary cluster. All right. Another thing to notice here is we have it as a reader instance over here. So whenever you click on this cluster also and you open it in your next region, you see that your primary or writer instance is always inactive. Now this is as expected. The reason being that there can only be one writer instance at a time and the remaining instances are all reader. All right. So this is to allow consistency across the database, across the regions. All right. So now that we have switched the weights, let's switch over. Let's execute the same dig command and the same domain name mydb.database.myglobalApp.com and see where it resolves to. So now you see that it goes to my global database cluster. RO stands for read only for now. All right. And it goes to the AP South one, which is nothing but my Mumbai region. All right. So that is fine. Now let's go ahead and let's make the switch over. But before that, I need to ensure that all my services are available. Yes. So I select my global database cluster. Now also ensure that we need to put this feature behind the global database cluster. Otherwise the switchover doesn't happen. You can always do that, but you always have to write extra scripts for it. Here there is an out of the box feature. All right. So now I have the option switch over or fail over to global database. Switchover is more happens in a more controlled way, but failover is in an unexpected scenario. So you could see here that in an unplanned event, such as a regional disaster, we do a failover. Now, if you have more than one region, if you have got more than one region and you want to choose between them, you can always choose. But for now, I have just one in the Mumbai region. So from Hyderabad, I'm moving over to the Mumbai region. So I'll just confirm it. And there we go. We see the status as failing over. And once this is completed, then you see here that this cluster status is gone now. Now what is, and this cluster status is also moved to pending. What will happen is this writer will become reader and this reader will become writer. And in a best case scenario, it is always recommended that you detach this secondary cluster from your global database, make it exist as a primary database, because anyway, the replication is not going to be successful. All right, so I will pause my recording here because this takes a certain amount of time. Let's resume back once it has finished failing over. All right, so it roughly took around 4 to 5 minutes. And now, as I mentioned, this has become my primary cluster, and my primary has now become a secondary cluster. And if you look at the cluster also, the previous cluster, which was inactive, is now in the available traffic, in the available state, and is ready to serve traffic. And if you go to AP South 2, which was our primary, is gone now in active state. Now, in ideal scenario, what you should do is you should go ahead and detach this and make it as a standalone cluster. All right, so you get the options in the action. So you see this remove from global database. That is the AWS recommended practice. All right, so as of now, we'll just do one more check. So one thing we skipped last time was in order for the demo purpose, I was routing traffic to the RO instance, read-only instance, just as the dig resolves. That was only for demo purpose. In actual scenario, what you should do is you should always map your both records with respect to the writer cluster, even if it's in an inactive state. Only then it will be, the Route 53 will be able to route traffic between both the regions. All right. So that was just for demo purpose, just for FYI. All right, so now let's have a final dig and see if everything is getting resolved as expected. So let's do one more dig and see where it is resolving to. So you see that it is now resolving to my global database cluster, and it's not the read-only instance, it is the primary write instance. That's because I went ahead and changed this record. If you notice here, it's no longer your read-only instance that I was pointing to. I have pointed to the writing instance also. Now you can also do this with health checks, with failover routing policies. There are different ways to implement it, but this is one of the ways. So here, if you're in a production system and you're cautious about it, this is one way to implement it. Thank you.